If you apply what I'm going to share with you in this video, then I can very confidently say that your music will be significantly more interesting and your music will actually be captivating to people listening. Now, arrangement is ultimately answering three questions. What, when, and what is it doing? What is the instrument or sound? When is it happening? And what is that instrument actually doing? And that's really it. If you can creatively approach answering those questions, then your music will have a much better shot at being more captivating to your audience, which is something I think we all want, right? So this technique I'm about to show you is all about effectively answering those questions more creatively and in a way that is a bit more systematic, but still creative. It's this. It's that each section of your song should have sonic diversity. Now, what does that actually mean? It means that your song should push forward in terms of what is happening in terms of sound. Now, there are lots of ways of doing this, but in simple terms, let's just imagine you have something that's got like a nice soft piano-led verse 1. Then verse 2 should not be the same piano-led verse in this specific scenario. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that every single song calls for this or that if you aren't doing this exact thing, then your music isn't interesting. The point I'm making is that this is a very useful technique that can work in a lot of different genres, styles, and songs, which I'm about to show you. The concept is actually really easy to talk about, but in terms of actually applying it, there are about 100 ways we can do this. It's entirely oriented around a very simple question. How can I make section B different from section A within an arrangement? So if we start with that soft piano example in verse 1, then we don't want a soft piano in verse 2 just doing that same thing, because is that different? Well, no, that's just a copy-paste scenario, and let's be honest, most listeners tune out when they hear identical musical information. Another way of doing this is by utilizing similar sounds or patterns, but surrounding those sounds and patterns with things that are different. So you might still use that soft piano example, but instead of just doing that same thing again, you utilize that soft piano, but then you are adding sonic diversity around that soft piano. And percussion is actually a really great way of doing this. If you have a section that has just that piano and maybe some like ethereal elements or something with no percussion, then in that following section or maybe that following verse, you can keep a lot of those same sounds going on, but simply by adding percussion, you are effectively changing the sonic landscape of that section and adding in musical diversity. The really awesome thing is we can go subtle with this concept, or we can go really aggressive with it as well, which tends to be my preference, but it's entirely up to you. So let's go ahead and pull up some productions of mine so I can practically show you what I mean within a couple different genres of music so you can see how transferable this concept is across different styles. All right, so this very first one is on a song called Sky on Fire that I produced and wrote with Sailor Wilterding. This was released under my artist name, NJL. And if we go to verse 1, this starts with that example that I said, just a very soft piano and kind of these ethereal elements. Sounds like this. Now, if we were to go to verse 2 here, and that was just completely identical, completely the same, that doesn't actually feel like it's pushing the song forward. Or heck, even if we go to the chorus, and it's just sounding the exact same, which is the part that comes right after this, is that interesting to listen to? Well, not really. So if we skip ahead a little bit and we kind of go to this pre-chorus a little bit, and I'm cutting the vocals, there are vocals on this, we're just focusing on the instrumental arrangement for now, but this is leading into this chorus, and notice how things change sonically. You're gonna get a little bit more bass, we're gonna get a little bit more of this strings element, and things start changing in a way that actually develops this idea that we are starting with this simple piano and ethereal type sound. We are now developing it in chorus 1, and then I'll show you what we do in verse 2 to make this even more interesting. So this is the pre-chorus. Chorus. So what you'll notice is that the piano is actually entirely gone. We have this soft piano right here, completely gone in this chorus, completely disappears. And instead we get a focus on this, which is the bass elements. We get a focus on the string elements, and then we get a little bit more focus on the percussion, which sounds a little bit like this altogether. And so as a result, this actually sounds like something is being developed. The idea that we started with is now actually being developed, but the way that we are doing that is by changing what is happening sonically. Let's go to verse 2 and take a listen to what happens in verse 2. So keep in mind, verse 1 sounded a little bit like this. Very simple. Let's take a look at verse 2 and really pay attention to what things sound different in this verse compared to the one I just showed you. It sounds a lot different It's the same song. We still have that soft piano going on, but it's doing something slightly different, which is again, developing this whole concept. And then we're utilizing other sonic textures and patterns and characteristics that help develop this idea. This is a very different kind of pattern. This adds a rhythmic pulsation to it. Adding a bass in. We now have that rhythm of the bass happening. It's also adding some character. Adding the strings in here pushes the whole thing forward. You need to stop thinking about your song as, let's just copy this section over here, and then these chords go here, and this is where it goes, and start actually thinking about how can you weave together something that is actually being developed. Does that make sense? And then if we actually go to the final chorus and really hear how this explodes into a full development of the concept, it sounds like this. Everything is here. Let's take a look at another example. Now, this second example is from a song that we're actually still working on, and this has more of a cinematic rock vibe to it, so it's very different from what we just did, but you're gonna see, again, how transferable this concept is. Now, this one starts here with more of an electric guitar and soft piano, so again, this one starts a little bit more on the soft side, and then we allow it to grow and develop into something big. So this is how the whole thing starts. And that's really the main chord progression that we use to get into this whole song. Things kind of develop a little bit in this first verse, but if you look at this, we're really looking at a very small amount of stuff happening. Like right in here, there's just not a lot happening. It's not until we actually get into this first chorus that things start developing, and you can even just look at the tracks. Like just look at the tracks and you can see not a lot happening, a little bit more happening, a little bit more happening, a little bit something different happening, and then everything kind of comes at the end. So think about it this way. We are using the timeline of the song to allow us to craft out and develop a full-blown musical piece of art. Why would you just want to copy paste? Don't copy paste. Find unique and creative ways of changing things throughout section to section to section to make it so your listener feels like every section I'm going to be given something new. So we start with that piano and guitar element, and then going into this first chorus sounds like this. We add in the drums, bass, strings, and we are still using the electric guitar as a way of tying this whole thing together. It functions a little bit like the glue to make sure that we're not getting hit with all bunches of new stuff. We still have that electric guitar holding everything down, but then we're adding new things around it, which is that surrounding concept that I used. And then there's this little interlude between the chorus and the second verse. You can again hear how we're introducing new sounds, new textures. We're making sure that it's staying interesting all the way through. We have full-blown drums, we have full-blown bass, we have some strings, we have the gang vocals, we have that electric guitar, we even have this like hammered string sound. Just adding new textures to make it more interesting, and it kind of tickles your ears a little bit. But then we go into verse 2, and things change sonically. We lose those drums. We go to something a little bit more ethereal, but still developing and pushing forward. We don't have the electric guitar anymore. It makes it feel different. It makes it feel like we're going somewhere new. And then we get into this pre-chorus, again, sonically a little bit different, pushing into the next chorus. A little more sustain. And then this is where the explosion happens. We have the staccato strings, we've got electric guitars, we've got the electric bass, we've got distortion, it's heavier, and obviously we're gonna have the vocals on top of this. I hope you're understanding that we're utilizing instrumentation, the different sounds, different articulations. So remember, arrangement is what is it, when is it happening, and what is it doing? Well, we've got guitars, and now the guitars are doing something different. So what is it doing? Now we've got this electric guitar doing the chugs, right? The more of these sounds. And as a result, we are making this whole arrangement sound significantly more interesting. So again, think about your music as developing musical concepts with different sounds, different patterns, and different articulations, and different textures. This is the entire concept. How can you make every section different? If you think this video is helpful, then I can pretty much guarantee that you will love my free production workshop called the Production Roadmap, where I walk through how I strategically produce a song from concept all the way to final mix. You can check that out right here, and I have a link in the comments down below as well. We'll see you in the next one.